If you've listened to iconic rap albums from the 80s and 90s, you've probably heard something familiar between them. Like this beat in LL Cool J's Mama Said Knock You Out. Now check out Run's House by Run DMC. And Dr. Dre's Let Me Ride. They all sampled one iconic drum beat, the sample that laid the foundation for well over 1,000 pop and hip-hop records.
I'm Doman T. Pongo, and this is Meaning in Music.
I love sampling. I just do. I love sampling music. That's like the backbone of hip hop.
If you've listened to a new song and thought, this sounds familiar, it's likely that the song you're listening to features a sample. This could be a beat, a hook, a vocal line, or even an entire melody taken from one song and used to inspire and create something new.
I grew up digging for samples and learned so much about music through my favorite hip-hop producer, sampling.
Oh my God, I've sampled my whole career. I've sampled everybody from Tupac Shakur to Luther Vandross, Never Too Much, one of the greatest instrumentals ever created. And you know, we mashed it up with Rihanna's Kiss It Better, that's another sample.
Sampling, as we know it today, uses technology that came about in the 80s.
And when you get into the recorded era, to capture that same feel that was going on in the streets and that same essence, you know, we would use the technology, the drum machines and the samplers, the SB1200s, to take a little bit of that record, that 30 seconds, and extend that part so you can make it into a full 3-minute song. Sampling all starts from the park. So it starts with Kool Herc, it starts with taking those popular breaks.
The break, which inspired sampling, can be traced back to DJs in the mid-1970s Bronx.
DJs began playing just parts of records, often referred to as the breakdown. They would use 2 copies of the same record and just extend that one 15-second or 30-second break into one very long loop by using those 2 records. That was the foundation of hip-hop music.
To keep their sources secret, early DJs like Grandmaster Flash and Kool Herc even scratched the labels off their records. How long it takes for DJs to dig in the crate to find that perfect loop. Because it's usually an obscure point. It's like, yo, this is 5 minutes into a 7-minute song or something like that.
Yeah, that's like the genius of the producer's ear. It blows you away how much they're able to take that small piece of a record and make something incredible with it.
And there's one artist in particular that producers have sampled more than any other. Who's the most sampled artist of all time?
Is it James Brown?
I'm gonna go with James Brown.
Right on, right on.
There's no question that the most sampled artist of all time is James Brown. There was so much about his music and about his aesthetic that made it right for sampling.
Why James Brown? Did the word spread among artists that this is where the gold is? What was it?
Part of the answer probably requires you to go back to just James Brown. What made James Brown James Brown?
You know, even the way that he moved on stage, the way he was dressing, you know what I'm saying? Like, oftentimes James Brown wasn't the most melodic singer. He would just be,
It was a kind of an accident of history that producers began to use this one little piece of funky drummer that came, you know, 3/4 or 4/5 of the way through the song.
So this is the beat we mentioned earlier. This 20-second drum break from James Brown's Funky Drummer has been sampled nearly 2,000 times. One of the most commonly used samples, not only in hip-hop, but in pop songs by the likes of Madonna, George Michael, and Sinead O'Connor. So what is it about this specific drum beat?
That particular patterning of the drum, rappers and MCs could build on. It created the perfect foundation, the perfect cadence for an artist to be able to spit a rhyme over.
Easy to find the pocket in that rhythm.
It allowed for that easy 4-bar structure of a rap. For the early hip hop producers to identify that was brilliant.
And it was Clyde Stubblefield who played the indelible drum break that's lived on in so many hit songs.
I do believe all musicians borrow from another. We call it sampling now. But in music's history, we're always listening and borrowing and incorporating something that we've heard before and creating something new.
Locating the sample as a consumer, as a listener, became an art form unto itself. It really makes you go back into the annals of music archives and try to figure out, well, what else can I learn about these artists that were originally sampled? Soul, funk, and disco have long been popularly sampled genres among hip-hop producers. But it didn't start out simply as a creative choice. It's a combination of limited resources and ingenuity.
Going back to the period of hip-hop's emergence in the 1970s, we're talking about a period when American cities, and in particular New York City, you had young people who were not having music classes at school, whose access to music were through their parents' turntables and record collections. And the brilliance of early hip-hop DJs was really using that as the basis, the turntables and the records, for the creation of an entirely new cultural movement and musical form.
I can't think of another musical genre that took a turntable or a record player and started scratching, right? And made that noise, right? So in some ways you could argue hip hop in some sense is subversive, and it takes the script and flips it and it's like, oh, we will show you what music is, right? You think you know what music is, we will show you.
In that party element, you got to see the people there in real time react to hearing these records flipped, and then hearing an MC kill it live.
And that's where you had MCs for the first time spitting rhymes over the records and the breaks that the DJs were spinning. That's where you had the breakers breaking to the break beats that the DJs were playing. So these parties, which were happening in parks, in school auditoriums, and rec centers, that was the birthplace of hip hop.
And since then, hip hop culture has traveled from the Bronx, Paris, Japan, South Africa, and every other corner of the world, showing up through music, fashion, art, and dance.
Hip hop in many ways is like one of these amazing gifts that the Bronx has given the world, right? And what's beautiful about the gift is it's not one thing, but many things, right? So you can make it your own, and that making it your own, it just is anew once again.
I think that one of the main things that makes hip-hop something that can really catch on throughout the world and make people, no matter where they are, feel like it's something that they can claim and make their own is this idea of remixing that's always been in hip-hop culture.
The remix is a technique that emerged during the disco era and popularized by hip-hop producers. It differs from sampling in that it doesn't just pull one part of a song. A remix can remake an entire song by adding new vocals, layering or removing elements, or blending it with a different genre.
A remix is just a reimagining of an existing record that you already made.
Like Savage by Megan Thee Stallion.
I'm a savage.
Dope track, but once Beyonce got on it, it went viral and catapulted Megan Thee Stallion into superstar status. The remix can be a game changer.
Sometimes the remix can be better than the original sometimes. Like it can add to it, create a whole new element.
Some of these samples and remixes are so connected to the original.
And like sampling, the remix gives new life to a song and can also introduce entirely new sounds to audiences around the world.
When I was in college, there were a lot of these beats that were just sampling small snippets of like Bhangra, Bollywood, and Asian music samples like Jay-Z's Beware with Punjabi MC.
The original track was a Bhangra song by British musician Punjabi MC that goes like this. Then Jay-Z dropped his verses on it, and it sounded like this.
I think actually depending on where you were, it was either Punjabi MC featuring Jay-Z or Jay-Z featuring Punjabi MC.
Same song, just a little different. And now you have two languages and two different audiences connecting with the same record.
If you are a hip-hop fan somewhere in Southeast Asia with very limited resources and could never envision yourself going to Brooklyn, you listen to something like 99 Problems and you have a story of driving down a street
from the hood, stupid, what type of facts are those? If you grew up with in your zapper toes, you celebrate the minute you was having dope.
That might not exist in your country, being in a car that you might not have access to in your country, and having a confrontation with a cop.
So I pull over to the side of the road, I heard, son, do you know I'm stopping you for? Cause I'm young and I'm black and my hat's real low. Do I look like a mind reader, sir? I don't know.
That is super relatable to young folks all throughout the world.
Sampling and remixing are more than production techniques. They promote a cultural exchange that keeps history alive.
It has found a way to keep the conversation going. It has found a way to bridge generations. Because you think of it, if the music had evolved and there wasn't sampling, how do people rediscover or discover for themselves what existed before?